God bless everybody. Today it is October 22nd of 2025, and the Middle East is exploding. So in my last video, I talked about how we've had in the last 2 years prior an event on Shemini Atzeret, which is the 8th day right after the High Holy Days on the Jewish calendar. It always is in the fall. You have the Feast of Trumpets, Yom Kippur, Feast of Tabernacles, and right at the end of that, you have Shemini Atzeret. In the last 3 years, we've had extremely interesting events happen on this very date. And this year, I think one of the biggest stories that's being underreported right now is actually happening and occurred on that very specific date. And that is Erdogan has his footprint in Gaza. And I'm going to bring you to the Paradigm 30 chart because I've been talking about how for the last year or two we would see Erdogan enter or at least start a process of a siege in Gaza that really doesn't have anything to do with Israel. It'll actually reflect on Egypt. Israel will be neutralized, I think, in the near future, and you can see that in the history books. And so this is a game changer because now that Erdogan has placed his footprint, started moving equipment and things into Gaza, they're never going to get him out. And this also puts Netanyahu in an extremely compromising position because now he's surrounded by Turkey through proxies of either Hamas or Syria. So I just did a video. This is a follow-up video to my last video, so that's the reason I'm bringing this up. I did this video about 9 days ago or so, 9-10 days ago. I had asked the question, are we going to see something happen on Shemini Atzeret in 2025? Because we had seen Hamas attack the first year on Shemini Atzeret in 2023 and 24. And then we saw Israel attack Iran in 2024 on Shemini Atzeret. And so my question was, were we going to see something this year? And yes, it was a very profound event that happened to bring Turkey into this on this very specific date. And one of the things I'm trying to do here is show that God works on his own calendar system, and that's the Hebrew calendars. You cannot use the Gregorian calendars because Shemini Atzeret ends on a different day every year because it doesn't line up with our calendars. So I've been talking about this. You would understand the Bible, and when you study it more, if you understood the Jewish calendars, and when they bring up these Jewish dates, that would then allow you to understand the time or season that they were in at that time, or the time or season that he's trying to get us to understand now. So this is the same text file, only I've added more to the end. I just wanted to bring this to your attention. So I had asked the question on October 12th, what was going to happen this year on October 14th of 2025 Shemini Atzeret. I want to bring these events to your attention because I thought there was a high probability that something could happen because something had happened in the last 2 years. So when you go back and look at the first year of the Shemini Atzeret in 2023, we had that attack of Hamas on Israel. And so I'm going to run through this fairly quickly because we just did this video. And then the year after that, in 2024, right after the High Holy Days, we saw Israel attack Iran. Now, the reason I knew this was going to happen was they had to do a retaliatory strike. But Iran attacked them on the very first day of their High Holy Days, and so they could not attack until all this was over, and so they did. They attacked on the very next day, right after the end of the High Holy Days, and it was on Shemini Atzeret, and this is the timestamp of when it happened, and Israel launched a retaliatory strike on Iran on October 25th, right after on Shemini Atzeret. And so I thought that was really interesting. We've had 2 years in a row, back to back. He likes to work in threes, so maybe we should be looking at Shemini Atzeret this year. What would happen that could cause the Middle East to completely melt down? And if you go to my paradigm, and I'm not going to get too deep into this, I've been talking for some time and I've charted this out. If you go to look at any of my videos, we would see Turkey starting to affect Gaza, possibly having a footprint in Gaza, neutralizing Israel somehow, because the Battle of Gaza, which happened in October in the history books, was actually against the Egyptians. So this is going to get interesting how this transition happens. The other thing that I've been trying to tell you right now that's happening is Turkey is using a proxy in Syria to go against the Kurds, okay, and that's getting ready to collapse the Kurds into Iraq towards Erbil, Iraq, for the Battle of Gaugamela, which also happened around October in the history books. So both these fronts are happening right now. Turkey now has an established footprint in Gaza, and that happened on this 3rd year, and I'm going to show you just how that transpired. So in the last video I had made some speculative comments on what could happen and how that might play out, so we'll look at those real quick and then we'll move forward into what really did happen. So I had made a comment that Hamas probably would not disarm, and they were not going to give up their weapons. They're backed by Turkey and Qatar. Turkey actually considers Hamas as a legitimate government, and now that Turkey has their footprint in Gaza with equipment and recovery groups and things like that, because they're trying to get these hostages back that they can't find, and that's one of Hamas's big thing is we don't have the equipment to find all the hostages, so we need to bring in alternative methods or people, which is Turkey, to do this, and it's going to give Turkey a footprint they're never going to leave. And this has opened up a door so where they just walked in the room without doing hardly anything but negotiations. It's amazing how they bypassed Israel. And you can sort of see that, because if you looked at that UN meeting, they had the UN meeting, everybody came out, Trump, Netanyahu, Erdogan, and everybody condemned Israel and all that. But then right after that, Trump did the 2025 Middle East peace deal. They had the conference in Egypt, and what happened? Netanyahu was invited. Turkey snubbed him, said that he would not show up if Netanyahu ended up in Egypt at the conference, and so Netanyahu was snubbed and he never did show up. So that was the start of this. And so it's amazing that you have a 2025 peace deal between Hamas and Israel, but Israel's not in the room, this conference. But they're not in the room. They're the other party. The only one in the room were the ones basically supporting Hamas at this point. So I wasn't sure if they would get all the hostages back. It turned out they did get all 20 hostages live back, but they did not get all of the dead hostages or deceased hostages back. They only got like 4. So that was a real problem. That is the real sticking point in this, that they had like 28 deceased hostages they were supposed to get back. They got 4, and this is a stall tactic by Hamas so that they can reestablish in Gaza, just as it indicates here. They're reloading these areas up, they're pushing the Israelis back, and then they're refortifying these areas and recruiting at the same time. So they did not get all of their deceased hostages back. So this was the start of the breakdown. Israel was probably not going to completely pull out of Gaza. That is also the case. That they have not pulled back, and actually they're considering resuming this confrontational strike and carnage on Gaza. If they don't get all the hostages back, that's why Turkey's trying to get down in there, get their footprint in, so that they can say, well, we'll help you find the hostages, but in the same point, we're going to back this Hamas leadership, or a hybrid Hamas leadership that's going to move forward. I also indicated that, and this is something that still could happen. I'm still watching this one if you go into the history, and I'm just speculating that this could happen. But based on Israel's duress, it would not surprise me if a leader of Israel or a high-level person might be captured. And so if you go back in the time of Nebuchadnezzar, he took the leader of Israel captive, which allowed him to drive through Israel, get to Gaza, and take on the Egyptians back in the time of the Battle of Carchemish. It would be about the same time of the Battle of Carchemish. This happened in May. Remember, the Kurds started to disarm in May, and then that totally fell apart. During that election cycle in October 2024, when they became a state and Erdogan indicated that he would destroy the Kurds. That's getting ready to happen right now. We just saw the Battle of Carchemish sort of happen in May, where Turkey drove them to the Euphrates, and now they're getting ready to drive them into Iraq in October. That's when the Battle of Gaugamela happened in October in the history books. So these things are following history pretty closely. I know I have a lot of people out here get crazy on my Paradigm 2030 chart, but it's just a history lesson in the past. He told you history would play out in the future, so I took that concept. And then with the date stamps that reflect the four kings to the new kings today, or right now, you can build an interesting chart because it should follow history. And so I believe that the chart's fairly accurate and is playing out as we go. And he built all this in. He created the history in the past, and he created the book to give us the manual to move forward. And he also placed in leaders of today that reflect exactly leaders of the past. I think that's extremely amazing in our world, that we have a God that is so omnipotent that he can do these things. It's incredible. So I bring the Paradigm 2030 chart up because I think it gives us a really good idea of where we are in time in this Shemitah cycle. If we move out of the Shemitah, then it would completely collapse, and the story would probably play out the same, but the paradigm chart would collapse. And I'll be the first one to admit that. I've said that many, many times. Actually, you will probably see in the next 6 months whether this paradigm chart plays out or not, because you will have an antichrist system and a signing of a treaty by March 30th to 26th. And look, I'm not telling you to go sell all your stuff or do any of that. Rapture's in this Shemitah is not till September of 29. So you got a long way to get through this before you go there, and you'll know by March of 26 if this doesn't play out and it's wrong. And I'll be the first one to come out and tell you it's wrong. It seems to be playing out right now, and I'm not going to walk off the field until I know for sure whether it's not playing out. It does seem to matter right now. I had speculated, because we've never seen a Gaza ceasefire hold up, that this one won't last more than a few days. It already started falling apart within a matter of a couple days. We had violence going on the ground, executions on the ground inside Gaza, humanitarian aid is getting cut back, the crossings aren't being opened, nothing's really going well in the ceasefire. So I speculated that it probably wasn't going to last. These are ideologically driven Muslims to eradicate a state called Israel, so it's hard to understand how they would ever give up their arms, especially if they're backed by a nation of Turkey, which would decimate Israel in a military confrontation, and that is part of the problem. Now that Turkey has both sides of Israel covered and surrounded, Israel's in an extremely compromising condition. How do they deal with a million army Turkish invasion possibly getting ready to happen to them before the end of the year, or now even, as we move forward? So I had speculated, maybe we would see, because this happened last year, we would see Iran get attacked by Israel on Shemini Atzeret. We had the 12-day war with the United States, where they hit right after Israel had hit Iran. We went over and hit their nuclear facility. So that job is not done. So I had speculated that they might want to go back and deal with that. That has not happened, and that is a high probability, because if you go into Daniel 8, they could be attacked again before Turkey comes in, but it looks to me like Turkey's already starting that process. And if you go to Daniel 10, Michael was attacking Iran. We had the Hamas attack. Israel went over, attacked them again right after on Shemini Atzeret of 2024. So the question is, are we just going to see Turkey come in, or are we going to see another attack by Israel on Iran before Turkey enters, based on Daniel 10 and its chronological order of events that occurs there? So Trump has green-lighted Netanyahu, if this completely collapses, to go in and annihilate Hamas, and then that would ramp this whole thing up again. That has not happened yet, but there is a high possibility that if they do not get these hostages back soon, that will occur quickly. And we're moving into the month of divine judgment at the beginning of today, or this evening. So today is the last day of Tishri. You're moving into Heshvan, going into October, into a new month. Divine judgment. That could be divine judgment against Israel, as we just had gone through the fall feast. And I already think Erdogan sort of saw this coming, because he had already come out, and on October 10th, 4 days before Shemini Atzeret, he had indicated that if the ceasefire failed, that he would have to deal with this basically on his own, because nothing's getting done over there, and this would be a heavy price for Netanyahu and Israel. So we would possibly see this whole ceasefire completely fall apart, and then that causes us some issues, because Trump threw everything on this one, brought the Arabs, the Egyptians, Qatar, everybody in the room, and if it falls apart, it's going to be a total nightmare and an embarrassment for us, because it shouldn't have been a Middle East peace agreement. It should have been maybe peace in Gaza for however long, and then we had all these other lateral wars going on, so I'm not sure I understood that completely. Anyway, if you do bring that in, the Arabs in the room, and they do embargo us like in 1973, you could see another possible oil embargo. I believe you'll see that before the end of the year, maybe moving into November. We'll see how that goes. That caused all kinds of problems. And that was during the Yom Kippur War of October 6th of 1973. And think about that, October 7th of 2023 was when we had the Hamas attack. So this caused us all kinds of problems, and it really multiplied the per price of barrel, which then multiplied and 3x'd up the price at the pump. If you see the $3 or whatever, that's where we're at around here, about $3 a gallon, that would then, you could potentially see, $9 to $12 fuel at the pump if that were to occur. So I wondered what was going to happen this year and how that was going to affect us. So, and it did. It was massive. Actually, Turkey brought themselves into the game, and that was the game changer here. So in 2025, Shemini Atzeret began on October 13th through Tuesday, October 14th, sundown or nightfall. Okay, on October 13th, 2025, Hamas released, and it's amazing, this happened on the eve of Shemini Atzeret as we're going into this terrible time that we're in right now. You're watching this play out right now, and I'm giving you a breakdown of what is happening at this very moment in time. On October 13, Hamas released the remaining 20 living hostages, which was awesome. And they were supposed to get all the dead people back. So the Palestinians got their 2,000 prisoners, but then they reneged on the deal and only gave back 4 of the 4 of the deceased hostages. And so everything started to break down in this first phase of the Gaza ceasefire, where they were supposed to get all the people back, dead and alive, to Israel, so they could have closure on that, and that's not occurred. I believe they've received 9 of them back. They might be 11. They might have got 2 back today, but it's a trickle feed, and that's allowing Hamas to re-enter into a defensive mode, as well as allowing Turkey to entrench themselves into Gaza at this very moment. So on October 14th, Shemini Atzeret, this started to collapse. The 4 deceased hostages came back. We had 24 hostages that did not come back. And I have reports on the 14th of 2025, October, Turkey, Erdogan puts boots on the ground in Palestine. So this has been verified by the Jerusalem Post that Turk is on the border. Erdogan gains foothold in Gaza under ceasefire plan phase 2, because they're going to be doing a possible reconstruction. And he's using this as a guise to state he's doing this as a humanitarian effect to try to find the hostages that the Hamas can't find, but yet then allowing Hamas to stay in power. So there's a power play going on here. And guess what? Turkey's using Hamas, Palestine, as a proxy state now, and expanding his Ottoman nightmare that he's been saying he's going to do for 23 years now. And the reason they're verifying this is it indicates that no one knows what is written in phase 2 of the Trump agreement between Israel, U.S., and Qatar, but it is certain that Turkish President Erdogan has already claimed his first prize and already has a foothold in Gaza, as emerged from new images revealed Monday, which show engineering equipment bearing Turkish flags inside the Gaza Strip. So Turkey's not going to leave. I'll guarantee you ain't going to push him out. Now that he's there, he's entrenched, and I'm going to show you what I think is getting ready to happen, as I'm speculating that this would be what I would do, or what happens when a country moves into another area to do military dominance on that specific area itself. So Turkey's not going to mess around at this point now that he has his footprint in Gaza. And you can see, based on the key events that have been happening out here since Shemini Atzeret on October 13th, 14th of 2025, he has been all over this, and he is not going to stop, and things are just going to get extremely crazy in the Middle East as you see this Turkish buildup in Gaza. So on October 13th, 14th, Turkey's first aid convoy following the latest ceasefire arrived in Gaza. The shipment consisted of 17 food trucks, 3 trucks of blankets and tents and coordinated with the Turkish Disaster Emergency Management Authority, or the Turkish Red Crescent, which is on the ground there, and they're going to coordinate everything as they're bulldozing areas for potential airfields, and they're probably going to break the Gaza potential blockade of 2007 in the same process. So on the 16th, right after this, Turkey appoints this guy, this new coordinator, to the humanitarian aid of the Palestinians. So he's in an active role of being a humanitarian. This is to make him look good to the international community while he gets ready to decimate Israel within the next 6 months. So look, this is mastercraft maneuvers by Erdogan to get him to a position to get a footprint into Gaza without firing a shot, and literally going over Israel's head to do it. I mean, over the country. They literally leaped from Syria into Gaza, and they're getting ready to go down into Egypt. But Israel's possibly could be neutralized here soon, so we'll see how that happens. I'm not sure exactly if it's going to follow history books exactly, but it could, and we could see Isaac Herzog taken captive, which would then strangle Israel, as they got a 1,000,000-man army surrounding them. I'm just saying, they don't have a chance at this point, and Turkey's going to do some damage soon. So on October 18th, Turkey's 17th Goodness ship arrives at the Egypt's Al-Ashar port, carrying 900 tons of humanitarian aid. The cargo was coordinated with the AD and includes food supplies and baby formula. You also have to think about that flotilla that keeps trying to break the blockade down there in Gaza since 2007. They probably will now allow it will be easier to break that blockade if Turkey's got ships down around Gaza preventing Israel from doing anything. So that's another thing I'll be watching, these flotillas that keep coming down there. On the 19th, the trucks began transferring aid from the 17 Goodness ship from this Gaza Strip border crossing on the same day, and we started restoring and clearing rubble. Okay, so now we've got heavy equipment down there right before we saw that report come out on the 20th. So now he's how did he get the equipment down there, guys? He had to fly it in somehow. I mean, seriously. So they're building their strips already to bring in all this aid, military and other assets to keep Hamas in place. And they're going to blockade off not only Israel, but Egypt as they move forward here. So we got this massively shaky process. We've got multiple violations of ceasefires on both sides, and incursions and death on both sides. They're restricting aid going into the country. There's all kinds of things happening here. And then on the 22nd, now let's go back here for just a second. It says that they did get a few of the hostages back on the 21st, so that's extremely important. And now they're starting the second phase, which is reconstruction, but they haven't finished the first phase. They haven't got all hostages back, and Hamas hasn't disarmed, so that isn't completely, and so these phases are blending into each other. And then on October 22nd, today, Turkey is intensifying its diplomatic efforts with Qatar to protect the fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. Well, of course, why wouldn't you? You have your footprint in there now. Why would you want Israel to start up a siege on the Palestinians when you're already in the process of protecting them? So I'm letting you guys know this Turkey's entered the game. They're going to start doing massive transportation of military assets. not only down into Gaza, but they have the 3 air bases in Syria through the proxy of Syria now, and those are being built up in the last few months. So this is all going to get ready to surround Israel with a massive siege or a deterrent for them to just stop the madness of Israel attacking anyone and then defanging them like I thought they would. And if you go back and you go out and you review any of the high-level military leaders out there, they will clearly tell you Israel does not have the capacity not to only take on Turkey, but all the proxies that Turkey is using against Israel as they're getting ready to attack them. Now, this first siege, like I say, this first siege is happening right now. Turkey's going to go against Egypt, then come back and hit Israel again with 10 full nations by March of 26 if this plays out in this paradigm and in the Shemitah cycle. So that's what you should be watching right now, because once Egypt collapses, you got Put and Cush there. They'll just join because they're radicalized Muslims. And when the Kurds collapse in October or November to shush Iran in January for the Battle of Persian Gate, you would see Iran fall. Then you would have all 10 nations formed. Those 10 nations would go back to Israel, and then you would see what? 2 prophecies actually complete at the same time. Ezekiel 38 and 39 would complete with the 10 nations being destroyed on a 6th seal event, as well as the large horn of the goat of Daniel 8 would be broken. And so that would occur on a 6th seal event based on my charting, and that blood moon solar eclipse event of 15 days between February 17th of 2026 and March 3rd of 2026 that you would see possibly a 6th seal event the next day after on March 4th. So I'm letting you guys know Turkey's in the game. You need to understand he will not leave this. I knew we were going to see something crazy happen on Shemini Atzeret of 2025. It's amazing that Turkey, through proxies, took Syria in 12 days. Now, Turkey has walked into Gaza, Palestine without a shot fired. I'm telling you, God is working in ways we can't imagine on time levels that we can't even think of. And I was asked the other day whether I thought the whole Middle East could completely collapse, melt down with 10 nations on the doorstep of Israel in 5.5 months. I said, well, yes. Actually, God could do that tomorrow if he wanted to. So if you don't think that this can happen in 5.5 months, you really don't understand the power of our Lord Jesus and God, I guess, because he could make it happen overnight. It will accelerate as we move forward. I've been trying to explain this. We're in an acceleration mode. Actually, and I know everybody gets crazy on the date stamps. I'm going to give it to you right now. If you're in the Shemitah, if you're in this Shemitah, and this is the one I'm working on right now based on the charting and all the information I've given you, it seems to be the one that we seem to be in right now and possibly could see a rapture on the Feast of Trumpets of 29, September 10th. If that is the case, and I'm not saying it is, and you'll know by March of 26 whether we have an Antichrist, whether this matters, you have 1,420 days as of today to the Feast of Trumpets of September 10th of 2029 to weather this. So look, don't go sell your cars, don't go sell your houses, don't do any of that stuff. Put food in your house, get ready for this. If it doesn't happen in the Shemitah, it will move into the next Shemitah, and then the paradigm will completely collapse, and I will let you know that, well, I'll let you know this year, in the next year, because there's no way it would hold up if we don't have an Antichrist down here. And I'll be the first one to admit that. I've told you this from the very beginning. This is just analysis. There seems to be a paradigm built into the book. If you're in this Shemitah, you have to have a rapture on the seventh trumpet, which happens on the Feast of Trumpets in the last year of the Shemitah cycle, or whatever cycle that's in. So I'm not misleading you out here. I'm just telling you right now you seem to be in a 7-year cycle that seems to matter based on the paradigm date stamps. Turkey entering this conflict into Gaza, and literally, Israel will have total... Look, can you imagine, and I'm going to end this on this note. Can you imagine if you have a skirmish between Turkey and Israel in Gaza? He's totally defanged Israel at this moment in time because they can't do anything. If they go in down and attack Hamas, Turkey's going to get into this game and just start flying massive amounts of military aid down and equipment. And they've got the 3 bases in Syria. They can load drones. I mean, they could drop thousands of drones on Israel overnight because they have the largest drone factory on the planet through his daughter's husband is the one that runs the largest drone factory on the planet in Turkey. They're one of the best at this. Look, this would be a game changer. This is a game changer. I think that's why I guess I'm out here explaining this to you. The game has changed. Turkey has entered the game, and Israel has been defanged one way or the other. Will we see a leader captured? I don't know. It happened in the history books. Could we see this leader taken captive like it did back in the history? Could Jehoiakim be taken captive? We just had the Battle of Carchemish in May. Okay, well, I'm just saying, guys, it follows history. Could Isaac Herzog be taken captive? He's exposing himself constantly out here while he's surrounded by hostiles in a country the size of New Jersey. I'm just, 200 guys in the wrong place could climb out of holes and he could be in Turkey in no time, or a proxy of Turkey's captivity of some kind. So, look, you need to understand what's getting ready to happen. Turkey has entered this battle. So Erdogan has been stating since he had his 100-year centurion anniversary in 2023 that he wants to become the new sultan for the next century. Okay, he's building a legacy. And in that same breath, for 23 years, he has literally been absorbing the area of the original Ottoman Empire. And you can go look at that expansion. He's in everything that matters. And if he takes over Egypt and Iran, he's actually accomplished that deal. He has the 10 nations he needs to go against Israel. He is ordained to do this by God. God will allow him. Israel is under judgment. Actually, we're going into Heshvan. That is divine judgment. I talked about how I think Israel is going under divine judgment, and they don't get it because Israel is ideologically driven to think that God will step in and save them. But that's not what he tells you in the Bible. He tells you clearly that a remnant will go into hiding for 1,260 days and 2/3 of your population will die through famines, plagues, sword, and terrible biblical processes that he has out here. And there's nothing you can do about it because he's already done with this situation. He's going to throw judgment down on the whole world. No one could reach out to God and turn this back. He's clearly said that even if the 2 best prophets would come to him at this moment in time, he would not turn back his wrath because he has had enough and we are past the point of no return. So God bless you all. Get your oil in your lamp. You are running out of time. The 4th quarter is getting ready to melt down. The shelves are going to be bare soon. You're going into stagflation. You're watching gold and silver move into historic levels. Things are getting ready to look. Everything's at the top of trend, and it is getting ready to retrace. Everything, metals, Bitcoin, markets, everything. By the end of fourth quarter, this is going to look real ugly, and you've got this tariffs kicking in. Actually, today, Trump threw additional tariffs on China, and you got the major tariffs kicking in November 1st. So I would be watching these dates. And God bless. Be safe. Get ready. This one's getting ready to break.